Hey everyone, information or data can be stored in a computer system either in some file system or in some database. In our previous session, we have understood how we can access different file formats using Pandas. In this session, we will understand how can we access database in order to fetch data for our data analysis. Pandas provides us functionality to access database in order to read or write data. In this session, we will write some code in Jupyter Notebook to access MySQL database. In order to access database, we need a ORM tool for Python, which is nothing but SQL Alchemy, and a MySQL client library, which is nothing but PyMySQL. Once we have these two libraries installed in our system along with Pandas, we can access MySQL database and create a data frame out of it. These are the steps by which we can connect to a database and access the data from some tables. Create engine is a method which takes the connection string and establish connection with the database. Read SQL table is a method which takes table name and the engine as its input and provides a data frame from a table content. We can use read SQL query which takes a query along with the engine and provides us a data frame based on the query we have provided as an argument. ToSQL is a method by which we can write a data frame into a SQL table. It takes name, connection, index and if exist parameters in order to create a table and write the data stored within this data frame. Remember, accessing database is very important because database is a very common source of data for data analysis. Now let's go to the Jupyter Notebook. We will write some code and connect to MySQL database. Here in MySQL Workbench, you can see I have created a table called customer within pandas_example database. We have only 3 records here. Our goal is to read this table and create Pandas data frame out of it. I have created a Jupyter Notebook called read and write database where we will explore all the commands to read data from a database, process them and write back to the database. We need Pandas to import in our source code and that is the reason I have added import Pandas as PD. We also have to import SQL Alchemy, which is nothing but an ORM tool for Python. We have to install MySQL client library, which is PyMySQL. In my case, it's already installed in my machine. That's what it will tell, requirement already satisfied. But if you are running pip install MyPySQL for the first time, it will install PyMySQL in your machine. Make sure you have stable internet connection for it. We have to create an engine using create_engine method, which is present in SQL Alchemy. It takes the connection string as its input. Pandas_example is nothing but the database name, what we have just seen in our MySQL Workbench. In order to read a table content and create data frame out of it, we can use read_SQL_table. This is a method which takes the table name, in my case it is customer, and the connection engine what we have created here. Let's run this cell to understand the content of data frame created using read SQL table. You can see the same 3 rows are stored within a data frame and this information is actually stored within a table called customer. Based on the requirement, sometimes we don't want the whole table content but the output of a query. Using read_SQL_query, we can create a data frame from a query. If you see here, my query is select ID and name from customer and we are passing this query in the method read SQL query. Let's run this cell to check the out. Here if you see, instead of all 4 columns, here we have only 2 columns what we have selected in our query. I have created a new data frame with a single entry and the goal is to add this entry in my database and create a new table out of it. pd.concat is capable of merging 2 different data frames. In this case, I have an existing data frame called df where we have the customer table content and I have created a new data frame where we have only one entry. In new df, we have only one row. After concat, the data frame content is something like this, where we have all 3 entries coming from the database and a new entry has been added from new df. ToSQL is a method using which we can write data into a database. We want all the data stored within df to be written into a new table called customer_info. Here we have added connection as engine. We don't want this index to be added into the database table. That is the reason I have put index as false. And in if exist, I have added replace. If customer_info table is already present into my database, it will be replacing the existing table with the new one. Let's run this. After running this cell, we will go back to MySQL workbench to check what is the content of customer_info table. This 4 is indicating that it has been successfully written 4 rows into customer_info table. In my MySQL workbench, let's execute select star from customer info table so that we can see the content of this table. This table has been created newly using ToSQL method. Observe here, first 3 rows are coming from customer table and the last row has been added based on our new data frame. So we have successfully created new table based on a Pandas data frame. Let's summarize the session now. We have understood that Pandas provides us the functionality to access database. Accessing data from database is a very frequent operation we perform as a data engineer or a data analyst. We should have a ORM tool, which is SQL Alchemy, to connect to a database. We need a client library for the database we want to connect. In our case, as we have connected with MySQL database, we need PyMySQL installed in our machine. The first task for us as a programmer is to connect to the database using create_engine method defined within SQL Alchemy. Once connection is ready, we can perform read_SQL_table to read the whole content of the table, or we can write some query and create a data frame out of that query based on our requirement. We can process the data frame and finally we can write it back to the database using ToSQL method. Thanks a lot for watching this video.